So I'm gonna make another video here. I feel like that's how I start all my videos. So this one is gonna talk a little bit about how I, as someone who's dealt with chronic illness for most of my adult life, and I'm now in my 30s, was able to navigate school and lots of different work activities. And, as you can tell if you've seen any of my other videos, that, I have quite an ambitious nature, but, how was that possible given that, I had limited energy in comparison to a lot of other people? So just to give you a little bit of backstory, when I was in my very early 20s, I started to feel ill. I couldn't quite explain why. I knew I had some digestive issues, and it ran in my family. My dad actually was diagnosed and passed away of colon cancer. This wasn't unusual for my family, but for me, it happened at a young age, where I had just become very fatigued, almost like flu-like symptoms very regularly. And so for me, managing my energy at a young age was hard because, while everyone else is going out and having fun, I found that I was trying to just constantly rebuild my energy in order to just do everyday things like go grocery shopping and just hang out with friends a couple days of the week. But, I got into the typical routines of being a young adult where, I would go out drinking and I would just eat whatever I wanted, even though my body was kind of screaming at me. And so as I did more and more of that, I started to get more and more disabled, I would say. So I should just mention, since the beginning of my 20s and now, there's been a dramatic transformation in how I eat, how I manage my energy, how I construct my life and structure it. But it's taken years and years to get to that point. But I always knew that I wanted to go to school, and I did for a long time. So I didn't want my health to get in the way, though I knew I had to not fight the health situation that I was in. So it did take time for me to adjust to the fact that I couldn't be going out and going on like benders with my friends and eating whatever I wanted and not getting sleep. Like, I needed to prioritize that, and it took a while for me to come to that realization. But the first time that I was really affected and it affected my school was when I first went back to school. When I went back to school for the second degree, so I had an associate's degree and then I went into a bachelor's degree. I don't know if it was just the transition of moving to a different city or if it was just the challenges of starting a new experience in life and having to meet all these new people and get adjusted to a new huge university. I was going to a university that was 40,000 students in comparison to a community college I went to, which had a very small fraction compared to that. So what I'm getting at is that my body shut down. So I felt like I could barely get out of bed, and again, the fatigue was debilitating. I just felt dizzy. I felt nauseous. And so first thing that I discovered about this experience in life was that I needed to learn to know when to surrender certain things and let go of certain things. So for example, I had this idea that I wanted to get through school fast. And, luckily I had some transfer credits from my previous program. But, instead of taking 5 classes a term, the first term I decided, I'm just going to drop some classes. And I dropped one, and it was an English class, and I wasn't necessarily totally into the course anyways, because I started in it and then I dropped it. But it was it was good for me to know right away that I could just tell myself that, you don't need to be on this fast track and you don't need to be plowing through life. You can just take your time. So I ended up doing 4 courses, but, that stayed with me, that idea of what do I need to give up in order to really attend to kind of building my energy. And that included, friends as well. I had to become more selective with the people in my life because I couldn't have this big body of friends that I needed to commit to because I couldn't. I couldn't go out every weekend. And, I was lucky if I was able to go out once a week just for, a coffee date with a friend, or if I was able to go out for dinner. So I really had to look at my life and think about, well, who is really important to me and who should I, preserve as kind of a close network. And that was hard because when you're young, you want to have lots of friends. So it took a while to get used to that. But once I did, I realized that, oh, so much more rich, a rich life experience to have close people in your life and not just 100 different people in your life. So, that was really important to me to discover early on in my degree, because, you're constantly meeting new people all the time. And something I had to decide who was like a good friend to have was someone who was understanding, because if I had to cancel last minute because I was just having a lot of pains in my stomach and just was, again, very exhausted, then they would have to be kind of understanding. And not everyone was. And so those people that were like, oh, no problem, like we can reschedule, I found them to be people that I wanted to connect to and build relationships with more. And so kind of as I went through the program, I had to focus on how to work with my strengths. I knew I couldn't necessarily be good at everything. Especially in my field, like there are many different parts of the type of design I was in. But, to really kind of work at refining the things that I had an affinity for, which wasn't everything in design, and what I felt like naturally I was quite good at. I wasn't so worried if I wasn't perfect in all areas of my courses. And then I also learned which courses I was going to be a B student versus an A student. And a lot of times it was my electives that weren't studio-based. They were more in the social sciences, which I thought was fascinating. Like I loved learning about sociology and anthropology and psychology, and I took some other humanity classes. But I was okay getting a less than ideal grade. And if anything, I was still getting, reasonably good grades. So it's kind of allowed myself permission to not be perfect. And I think that was liberating. It was also kind of hard for me and my proclivity, which was to always do the best at everything. But again, it was something that I needed to do in order to heal myself and my physical health, because it just is impossible to be good at everything. And another thing is I needed to figure out ways to allow for flexibility in my life. And so, I would reach out to instructors beforehand, before taking courses, and I would ask a little bit about the structure of the course. And, some courses, they really demanded that you do a lot of assignments and you had to be there in class. But some courses, it was a little bit more self-directed. And so in my program, I ended up taking multiple self-directed courses, meaning I could create my own course. I also mentioned that I took practicums, and a lot of those practicums, I was able to set my own schedule and the work activities I was doing. In some of the studios, as you got further and further I got further in my degree, I was able to go into courses that weren't so rules based. Like, it's like as you get further in your degree, the instructors have more trust into who you are. They kind of get to know you more, and they kind of allow you to navigate the course the way you think it might be best, especially in, again, my discipline, maybe not all disciplines. So I kind of just kept reminding myself that as I was going through the program that, maybe as I continue, I'll get more autonomy. And that ended up proving to be the case, especially in my master's. I found masters in my discipline extremely flexible. We had to go to class a couple times a week, but beyond that, a lot of it was on our own, doing research from the comfort of our own, wherever we felt best to work. And so I really felt like that was what helped me get through school, was that I had a lot of autonomy in my area. Now, if I was to go into an area that required me to be in labs or in specific courses every single day, like I don't know if I could have done it. And I purposely didn't choose a program, especially my master's, that I had to do that. It was harder when I started TAing, but I just let my instructors understand, like, I had some health complications, and, they were very understanding. I told them, if I had to miss class, like how, was there a way for me to pitch in more? So instead of going into the class, maybe I could do some admin work for them, or I could do some of the marking with them on the side when, side of class. And, having that open conversation was pretty vital for allowing for more flexibility and just more openness to the situation if I didn't really explain it to them. And, I didn't go into personal details, but I just kind of explained some of the challenges. I found that most instructors and professors were really understanding. So that was kind of my journey. And I've been able to manage it a lot more as a working professional. But one thing for me that's been important is to build a certain level of social capital in an area, meaning I've been able to build trust with people I work with and my supervisors and my colleagues by working in places for a long period of time. So I haven't really talked about my student services role, but I've been there for 9 years, and teaching now has been 5 years, and then I've been in the department where I was teaching for over 10 years. So building that trust among my colleagues helps them understand my needs, and I can understand more of their needs and how I can help them. Hopefully that kind of gives you some ideas of how I've navigated this, and it's still an ongoing process. And especially with the Western governors, I find it very accommodating because I'm really carving the path on my own, and I love that. And it doesn't mean that every week I can get everything I want to get done, and that's okay for me. Like even recently I was hoping to get a couple more assignments done and it didn't happen, but I know that by not doing, I have more energy and I'll be able to do more later on, and that's gonna keep me kind of going forward. Is sometimes it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and eventually you kind of get to where you need to go. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Subscribe if you want to know more about my life and my experience with being in a professional career and going through a bunch of different schooling, and hope to see you in the next video.